Hey, everybody, welcome to Live Dreams. We are so glad that you're here with us. Today, we have two special guests. We have Marcella and Joey. Hey, ladies, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good.
Hi,
Good.
everyone.
Hello.
These are professionally trained, expert dream interpreters. And so they've been with us for probably the better part of 2 years now. So they really are good. And um, it's always a privilege to have extra people here with us. So um, we like people to be able to get out and stretch their legs a little bit, get the opportunity to kind of be put on the spot with a live dream interpretation. It's a little bit different than what we normally do. A lot of the people, pretty much most of the people that you see on here with us, have come through the spiritual intelligence mentorship, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But a lot of that is more kind of written analysis or group work. And so the opportunity to be able to have somebody share a dream and then immediately respond back is a little bit different of a skill. And it's a skill, frankly, that a lot of people are kind of terrified of, but it's really not that bad. And, it's the dreams come from the Lord. The interpretation comes from the Lord. So it's really all about him anyway. So all we got to do is show up and listen. So let's open up with a word of prayer. Father God, we thank you for Live Dream Tuesday. We thank you for the privilege and the opportunity to hear from you and to help guide people in their dream life, to help decode what you're saying, Lord God. And we just celebrate the opportunity to hear the love language of God through dreams yet again. God, we ask for more, that you would speak to us more through visions and dreams, through words of knowledge, words of wisdom, even prophecy. Lord God, we eagerly desire these gifts, Lord, the seer realm, the prophetic realm. And Lord, we ask that you would tell us the truth of the world. There's so much chaos that's going on right now in our existence and the world around us, Lord, and we want to hear from you. We want to hear directly from you. And so we thank you for the opportunity to do that tonight. We ask that you would bless this time, that you would give us more wisdom, more grace, more favor, particularly in interpretation and wisdom in the dream realm. And that may it be said of us that we are among those who can stand in the counsel of the Lord to see and hear your word. Bless this time, Father, in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. So let's jump right in with Ina.
Hi there.
Hey, how are you?
Good. How are you guys doing?
Good.
Good.
Awesome. So this is a dream that I had yesterday, May 15th.
Hot off the presses.
Pardon?
Hot off the presses.
Yes, hot off the press. So in the first part of this, I'm in a church service, and I just know that it is a funeral, and that is for a young man from a former church. I don't know who the young man is. I just know he was from our former church. And I'm sitting in the church service. We're just kind of going through the funeral. And then at one point, the pastor is praying, and I'm standing up, and I realize I'm the only person in the congregation standing up. And I kind of laugh to myself and sit down thinking one of my friends who is there also is going to give me a hard time about this later. So I just kind of laugh at myself and sit down. But then I noticed during the service that at different times there's different pockets of people that stand up and sit down at certain times where the rest of the congregation is just sitting. So then after that, I also just kind of wondered during the dream if this was some strange denomination that did things in a way that I was unfamiliar with. And then there's a scene change, and I realized the church scene was actually a dream, and that the young man I was dreaming about was not actually dead. So then I'm driving my car, pulling my trailer behind me, and in the car I have two of my grandsons, Noah and Levi, and my youngest son, Tommy. And we drive to a former pastor's church office. And I walk in, there's a secretary there. It's a different surroundings than would normally be. And the office is very cluttered. her desk is just covered with stuff. There's a card table in front of her desk covered with stuff. And the reason I'm there is to offer my help in whatever situation was going on with this young man. So I go up to the secretary and ask if I can help in any way. And I'm just checking my notes here. And she hands me a long rectangular box, maybe like 9 to 12 inches. It's skinny. And I know that inside there's information on paper kind of rolled up. I didn't take it out and look at it. But she seemed really relieved for the help. And she told me that this mission would be very dangerous if I accepted it. So I left and I went back and buckled my grandsons back into their car seats. There was a black puppy in one of them that I think they then held after that. I backed up my trailer and headed out, then realized I think I had forgotten something and went back. And that's where the dream ends.
Wow, pretty complex dream.
I seem to get those.
Yeah. That's it's really interesting. There's a lot there. If you see me looking off to the side, it's because I'm writing notes.
That's okay. I'm looking at mine as well.
So I'm just going to repeat it, make sure I got the gist. In the dream, you're at a church, you're at a funeral for a young man who was part of your former church. The pastor's praying. You realize you're standing up and you're the only one standing. Kind of laugh because you know you're going to get a hard time about it later. You sit down, and then throughout the service, different people are standing, like different pockets of people. And you're like, I'm not sure what they're doing. Is this some sort of strange denomination? And then suddenly you realize that the dream scene or the church scene was just a dream, basically a dream within a dream. And so the young man is actually not dead. So you hop in your car with the trailer with Noah, Levi, and Tommy. You go to the church office. You meet with the secretary. Her office is full of stuff, lots of clutter. You're there to help the young man. She hands you a box with some papers in it. And she's relieved for your help and says, if you take this on, it'll be a dangerous mission. And do you accept the mission at that point or no?
I didn't feel apprehensive or afraid. I just took the information and left knowing I was going on this mission.
Okay. And then you go to buckle your grandsons in the car seats. There's a black puppy in one of them. They're holding the puppy, and then you back out, but then you forgot something, so you kind of backed back in.
Yep.
Okay. Interesting. So the idea of a dream within a dream a lot of times represents the idea of waking up from something or waking up to something. So it was interesting. There's two things that came to mind. The first one was my history in the Catholic Church, where it's kind of stand up, sit down, kneel.
Mm-hmm.
Christian calisthenics, as we call it. But that's usually everybody. Everybody's doing that at the same time. The other thing that I thought about was actually Congress, like during the State of the Union, when at the podium is speaking, and certain ones clap, and certain ones will give a standing ovation, and the whole or the other side of the room is doing nothing, or certain people will hear, they'll stand up. Both of those lead me to the conclusion that what that's talking about is the spirit of religion. It's either a spirit of religion and or a spirit of politics. The political spirit and the religious spirit are basically twins anyway. And so it's a spirit of politics or religion, something that makes it like a duty to express yourself in certain ways at certain times. And so some people want to do that, and other people are just kind of sitting there. Obviously, the focus of the whole church scene, other than the people standing up in different pockets, is the death of the young man. And so you look at the young man like, what does the young man represent? In the broad sense, he reminds me of, I think it's Thomas Jefferson. It reminds me of the nation. And some of the signers of the Declaration of Independence were very young when they actually wrote and signed that, like early 20s. And so I feel like what this is the political spirit and the religious spirit kind of at war. And to me, it feels like God is waking you up to what that's doing to the young man being the United States of America, though she's no longer young. She's relatively young compared to most other nations of the world. If you look at like the British Empire or some of these other countries that have been around for thousands of years. And so I think it's also interesting that you stood up, and that's the idea of like standing with or standing alone, somebody making a stand. And so you standing up, making a stand represents standing up for something, since the main focus of the service was the funeral of this young person. It's the idea of standing with the deceased or standing with the fallen. But then you wake up and he's not fallen, he's still alive. And so you're like, okay, well, I'm going to go help. And so you go and you report to the secretary, which reminds me of a lot of government agencies have cabinet members or secretaries, right? And so you go to the secretary, it's a little bit disorganized, kind of disheveled. And ultimately you get a box of, it's like Pandora's box. If you open this box, it's like accepting this mission, right? And the mission could be dangerous and it could be of personal cost to you. There's some paperwork in there. I believe the paperwork could be some of the covenants of our nation in particular. And you have 3 young men from not just the next generation, but the generation after. So it's the idea of a generational call to, they're with you. So if you're going to be in danger, they're going to be in danger, because obviously they're riding with you, they're traveling with you. And so you're putting not only yourself, but your family kind of on the chopping block in a sense to go help save this young man. So that's kind of the general sense. There's, more with the names of the boys and the puppy,
Right.
but Joey and Marcella, did you guys get anything or anything different?
I just looked up the names of the boys while you were talking, and it's really interesting because Levi means united and Tommy means twin.
Right.
So that just kind of tied into some of the things you were saying.
Mm-hmm.
I also heard for the paper within the box, I heard that it was a scroll, like her identity.
I heard that as well. Yep.
Interesting. Okay.
I heard that the family is like a church. I felt like the family is like a church, and so you were standing, but a lot of other people were sitting and standing. So you were making a stand, and you were, because in the dream it said that, "Can I help?" You were asking, "How can I help?" And so I felt that you were bringing others to the church, and that you were bringing people that were kind of dead and maybe not fully on with believing. You were bringing them like back to the life, bringing them to Christ.
That is also really cool. I can see the spirit of religion as well as the political. And as far as the spirit of religion, that is so applicable to me right now, because I am the first in the family to, how do I put it, to have branched out into being baptized by the Holy Spirit, having a heavenly language, just kind of opened up to all of that, where I am the only person I know around me that that has entered into that, and everybody else is still either has walked away from the Lord, or they're haven't discovered, what more there is beyond religion.
Yeah.
So very cool.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think the actionable intelligence would be 3 things. Number 1, continue to stand out or make a stand. Number 2, take the mission. And number 3, bring your family with you. Train up the next generation as much as it is within your power and you have access to the grandkids, even the grandkids, and let them know, what God is doing in America, what's happening in the church. A lot of times it's easy for families to kind of take for granted if they've been going to church their whole life, and maybe the next generation doesn't take their kids to church and all of that. And so it's the idea of instilling, and even in broad sense, the modern life that we live, a lot of times there's the grandchildren are actually raised by the grandparents, because the parents are working so much, they're actually spending more time with grandma and grandpa. And so I think that that's just an opportunity for you. Also, it parallels the idea of wanting to help the young man represents the country, but I believe that it is also the next generation, and enlisting the help of those in Gen Z to help you help the younger generation, which I don't think the next generation would be like your kids. I think the next generation would be like the latest generation coming up, which is the young generation now.
Yeah, I've got quite a few in different generations. I have 9 children, so
Wow,
makes sense.
that's amazing. Well, cool. Well, happy belated Mother's Day.
Thank you very much.
And thanks for calling in. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right. Have a good one.
You too.
That was a really interesting dream. I like dreams within a dream because a lot of times they're a little bit more complex. They remind me of like the movie Inception, and there's multiple layers even within the dream. It's kind of like God telegraphing that there's different layers in the dream. So let's go with Karen.
Hi.
Hi, Karen.
I had on 4:30, I had a couple dreams. I had several short dreams, but there was a few of them that kind of bothered me. And so one of them was about a bunch of dead dogs. And so I'll share that one with you. And there was a couple other short ones that I don't know if they're related. They thought they might be, but I'm not sure on that. But anyway, the dogs, I felt like there was a community building. It was like a brick building, and they had some sort of problem. I think it was with pests or something, where they needed a bunch of dogs to get rid of it. So they hired a bunch of dogs, and after they used the dogs to kill whatever problem they had, which I didn't get a clear sense of that. After they did that, they killed all the dogs. They did it by putting a cloth over their mouth, over their noses to kill them. They had them all laying out on different blue tarps on the grass. It was like a well manicured lawn, and the sidewalk kind of went out and curved, and they were all laying on the grass. They were on blue tarps. They had a bunch of blue tarps laying out there, and the dogs were all laying on the tarps, and they had them sorted by, there was a couple tarps with big dogs in it, a couple tarps with middle-sized dogs, and a bunch of, tarps with little dogs in it. Let's see. And I noticed that they all were they had like longer fur, or like we have a dog, it's a short hair, it's very short fur, but all the dogs had more fur. And it just made me sad that they had used the dogs for the purpose, and then they killed them all. And that was the end of that dream.
Interesting. Yeah. Really interesting dream there. We have some pets people with us. Joey, do you get anything for the dogs or the pests?
This might sound weird. What I'm hearing is that the long-haired dogs were sheepdogs. And when I think of sheepdogs, I think of military and law enforcement, and how a lot of times they're used to take care of a problem and then cast away, like with our vets and stuff like that. But I don't know. Other than that, I'm not getting anything right away, but that's the first thing I heard.
Okay. What kind of dogs would they? Well, it's interesting that they're different sizes. So it sounds like they're all different breeds. But it's interesting, the idea of hiring dogs to chase away pets or to kill some sort of problem. And I'm wondering what would be the infestation that dogs would fix. Oh. I heard your Jezebel, right? Because Jezebel, when she was thrown from the
Oh,
balcony or
yes.
whatever,
Yes.
it was the blood, the dogs that licked up the blood in the streets, and that wouldn't necessarily be a dog of any particular size or breed that would do that. Um, but wow, yeah, that's really interesting. Marcella, do you get anything?
I'm not getting anything at the moment.
I think the idea of hiring killer dogs is super interesting. Um, and then I also think it's the whole idea of the idea of cleaning up, like in like so many movies that we've seen where they send in a special forces team or an intel team to do something, and then when they get the job done, then they go take those guys out so there's no witnesses and there's
Mhm.
all of that. I feel like that's what's happening. Um, and I just think it's really interesting that they put a cloth over their nose, which to me
Mhm.
reminds me of the whole mask thing,
Yes.
and it also reminds me of dulling their senses. Like what they're trying to do is, your nose represents, your knower, your sense of smell, your sense of intuition. And so part of the cloth thing represents the idea of, the whole pandemic, but it also represents the idea of the propaganda and the gaslighting that mainly the media, but the media in conjunction with the government and big tech has been misinforming and propagandizing their people left and right. And they're doing it in a sense to provide, scandal overload and all of this other stuff. We've just every single day there's whistleblowers, there's scandals, and it seems like nothing is happening. No justice is being done. They won't even look into the people that clearly everybody else can see is guilty. They won't even look at certain pieces of evidence, and they want to deny it and all of that. And so it's the whole idea that what really needs to happen in this nation is Ahab and Jezebel need to be overthrown. And of course,
Mhm.
the story of Ahab was a weak willed, masculine person, obviously, a weak willed man whose wife then rose up and committed murder so he could get what he wanted. And it's this overbearing, Jezebel, rebellious kind of woman. It's people often mistake a woman leader as a Jezebel. They're not anywhere close to being the same thing, because certainly we know that women can lead, and they can lead very well. But a Jezebel is somebody that undermines, supplants, manipulates, controls. She had the guy that owned the property that Ahab wanted falsely accused and then killed for blasphemy, which he was an innocent man, and then they were able to take his land and give it to the king. So the idea of cleaning up that mess, to me, is the idea of cleaning up things that are happening on a national level, but also on a global level. And the idea that we're going to need a lot of dogs because there's going to be a lot of people thrown from the balconies, and there's going to be a lot of blood to lick up. And I think of, in particular, the feminist movement as it's gone bad, and how they've done things like emasculated men, or
Mhm.
just done any number of things, the blood on their hands from the whole abortion thing. Like, it's the whole idea of basically blood guilt that they're trying to have somebody else clean up, and then they can off whoever cleaned up that mess, put it in a nice blue tarp, blue representing like revelation, something that's literally laid out on top of the grass that you can see that bunches them together. They try to sort them by size or whatever. um, so yeah, it's just like this parable of what's happening, mainly I believe in the federal government institutions, where things are being
Okay.
brought to light. There are spirits, there are evil spirits like Ashtoreth, like Diana, like Jezebel, that are behind a lot
Mhm.
of these moves that companies, organizations, banks, entire industries are making. And The dogs are going to come in and clean up the mess, because you know what the dogs did is the dogs cleaned up the mess. It was the fall or the death of that person that was announced by the prophet. That's what the dogs were cleaning up.
Okay.
And it was their own people. It was the eunuchs that turned against Jezebel and threw her out of the building. And I believe that that's where we're at. That's what's going to happen. The people that are going after the death cults, the death cults where they want to depopulate the globe. They want to do things with the pharmaceutical companies. They want to support things like abortion, and that whole thing. Yeah, it's the whole idea that Jezebel needs to be dealt with, and and it's going to happen. So, do you guys have anything else? Anything to add to that? Yeah, there's a lot of good thoughts here. Canine law enforcement. Yep. Congress, blue tarps. Yeah. Well, thank you, Karen. That's
Okay.
a really interesting dream.
Yeah, I just have a question. What's the actionable intelligence for this then? Just because I got it, and I'm like, I agree. I got like some of those things. Like I got more of the COVID end when I was praying into it, but that makes sense. What you're saying, that all resonates. And is it more just an awareness like this is coming?
This is,
You
it's a really interesting thing that you brought that up, because one of the things that we've been looking into and spending a lot of time on is the whole idea of actionable intelligence. And does every dream have actionable intelligence? And, when you look at the first dream of Nebuchadnezzar, it was about the rise and fall of empires. Well, in advance, I mean, King Nebuchadnezzar was the head. He took it as actionable intelligence because in the very next chapter, he makes a statue 90 feet tall and 9 feet wide of solid gold. So he took it on as actionable intelligence. I don't think that was the actionable intelligence. Well, yeah, a lot of that was just kind of informing him of where he stood in the hierarchy of times and seasons. And I think this dream is telling us where we stand in the hierarchy and things that are either in the process of coming or about to happen. And I feel like, there's already been a backlash on law enforcement, deserved or not deserved. It's not for me to judge, but particularly because of a lot of the cover-ups. But when actually they go in and they clean up the mess of the corruption and the pestilence, I believe that there are going to be leaders that are going to try to do, defund the police, those kind of campaigns where they're going to try to blame it on law enforcement overreach. And what it's going to be really is it's going to be justice for the first time in a long time that we've seen it in America. There's a lot of people on both sides of the aisle who are crooked, who are not going to be happy with it. And so when I think of the TARP, I think of like the thin blue line, the whole idea of like the law enforcement or the law enforcement flag. And I think we need to be very careful and stand with righteous law enforcement. I think we need to boldly call out the abuses. A lot of the abuses we're seeing are on the federal level anyway. But we need to stand with, get to know our sheriffs, get to reach out with the people that are actually on the job, who put their life on the line and who are going to be able to stand with us in local conflicts. Your county sheriff in particular, because they're not hired by the governor. They don't report to anyone. They're voted in, and they can actually expel federal agents from your house or from their county. They have the constitutional authority to do that. So yeah, I think it's more of a times and seasons kind of dream. But also, if anything, my desire, probably yours as well, is you want to stand with the dogs, and you don't want the dogs to be cut down for doing their job. But
yeah, definitely. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
But well, awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. Sounds good.
Take care.
You take care, Karen.
Yep. Bye-bye.
All right. Maria.
Hi, guys.
Hey there. How are you?
Hi.
Good. So this dream I had from the other night, I dreamed that I walked into my office room that I have at home. when I walked in the room, I saw on the wall, there was a big patch of paint. There was no clock behind it, but there was one part of the paint that was in the form of a clock hand, and it started turning clockwise on its own.
So just this piece of paint that looked like a clock hand started turning on the wall.
Yeah.
Wow, that's super interesting. That reminds me of a biblical reference. What do you ladies get? Anything for that?
I was hearing watching paint dry, like the time that it takes to watch paint dry. God's
Okay.
timing.
Interesting. Interesting. Marcella, do you have any initial thoughts on that?
So you said you walked into the office of your house. Is that
Yes.
correct? And then you saw on the wall a patch of paint,
Yes.
and then it looked like the hand of a clock that was turning. Is that what you said?
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah, I feel like time is passing by, similar to what Joey says. Time is passing by as the paint is drying.
Yeah, I think it's I heard the same thing, Dawn. It reminded me of the writing on the wall. Or the writing on the wall in Daniel 5 was main tekel parsons, which meant you have been weighed in the balance, or you have been weighed, measured, and found wanting, and your kingdom will be divided. Your life will be required of you. This was to Belshazzar, Nebuchadnezzar's son, and your kingdom will be divided between the Medes and the Persians. So it was times and seasons. It was the ending of an era. It was the destruction of the wicked. It was an ending of corruption, because what they were doing is they were having this massive, we'll call it a party, but a ridiculous amount of revelry that was happening. And they pulled out the temple furnishings that they had taken in Jerusalem when they took Jerusalem into captivity, and they were back in Babylon. And so they're drinking out of the cups and the sacred implements that they did sacrifices to the Lord with. And God just showed up, and he's like, you're done. And so he sees what looked like a human hand, but they said it was a hand like the hand of God that wrote on the wall, and then nobody knew what it meant. And what they said was tekel parsons, which means you have been weighed, you have been measured, and found wanting. What's also really interesting is what was happening at that moment, and it was already set in motion before that. So God had already decided the judgment of this king. Was he had sent Darius the Mede and Cyrus the Persian, and some people historically say that may be the same person. And so whereas this does announce the end of a corrupt administration, it also announces the return of Cyrus, because that's who showed up that night and killed the king, was Cyrus the Persian. And that's the whole Isaiah 45 thing. And so the return of 45, however you want to see that, it's interesting because we've gotten this recently in another dream or two. I had a conversation with somebody about this exact thing, and the idea that it mentions, basically it's announcing regime change. It's announcing the demise of the wicked at the hand of God, but also it's announcing who's going to take his place. And I think that's absolutely fascinating. And it's even more fixed than times. You think of a clock. Well, you could just go up and you could turn back the hand, turn back time on the clock. This is actually painted into the wall, and the paint itself is moving. So there's a level, just like the writing on the wall, of a supernatural component that's happening with time being up or time being moved in a particular direction. And again, the idea that their time is up is basically the same thing as you have been weighed, measured, and found wanting, and your life will be required of you, and your kingdom will be divided between the Medes and the Persians. So
Okay.
I think it fits very well, by the way, with Karen's dream before about the dog sent in to lick the blood up of Jezebel, and even the idea of Gina's dream at the beginning of the religious spirit and the political spirits, and that we believe that we're in the time right now, like it's not coming, like it's right now, like it may even be this month, according to what several people have dreamt about and prophesied, that it's time for the wicked to be dealt with. It's time for corruption not just to be exposed, it's time for justice to be done. And those who have borne the the burden of leadership and have not handled it well and have done it for their own corrupt purposes and their own ill-gotten gains and their own attempts to stay in power, they're going to be dealt with by God, and it's not going to be pretty for them. But I think when the when the wicked are dealt with, the righteous rejoice and the city rejoices, and I think that's what we're about to see, is the idea that God is on the move.
Amen.
So very profound dream, even though it's a very short, kind of simple dream.
Mm-hmm.
Some of those simple dreams, I'm telling you, they can be super profound. So thank you for being a regular on, Maria, and we appreciate you sharing.
Oh, thank you. I'm loving this. Thank you.
Awesome. All right.
Take care. You too. Bye.
Bye. One of the things that we do is we're looking for a group of people who want to learn more about dreams, who want to do what we call government level intelligence analysis of dreams. Because what we do is we have a vision to go deep, deep into dreams. Like we could take that dream, we could take actually the first 3 of these dreams, put them together, form a dossier, and begin to see what God is saying on behalf of the nation. Because believe it or not, guys, there's a lot we're not saying. There's certainly, we're taking broad strokes and we're kind of speaking, and this is the direction of the dream. But what we found is it's almost an endless amount of depth that you can go into dreams. It's almost impossible to over-interpret a dream. I've heard people use that before. Well, you can over-interpret a dream. We spent 2 months on one dream and haven't found the end yet. And so I think it's really, really interesting that what God can do and what God can show a group of people who are dedicated to treat dreams like the spiritual love language of God, like intelligence, and to want to hear from more. And so to that end, we want to let you know that we're about to launch the Spiritual Intelligence Mentorship yet again. We're going to launch it at the end of May, and it runs for 8 weeks. And it's going to be another 2 or 3 months before you would have an opportunity to be involved again. And so if you've been thinking about it, if you've been around our community, if you want to go deeper, if you want to be part of the community of people, whether it's the interns or the SIS, the group of people that we're with, the first step and the start of that is to attend the Spiritual Intelligence Mentorship. We live in a world with much confusion, propaganda, and outright lies. It's hard to know what's real, what's false, and what's really going on. Do you have even one source that you can trust? And I mean really trust. Can you imagine leading a state or an army or a nation in this environment? What if you heard from God every day about your life, your purpose, and your future, and you understood with clarity what to do? Imagine hearing so clearly that He even trusted you with intelligence to advise leaders desperate for answers. Hi, I'm John Redenbo, and I have the honor of leading the Spiritual Intelligence Mentorship, an in-depth program where a team of people work with you in a highly structured atmosphere to teach you how to decode the encrypted language of God through dreams. If you're up for the challenge, I invite you to apply today. Register at spiritualintel.com. All right. Well, welcome back. We have Stella.
Hello. Hi, guys.
Hey, there you
How's everybody doing? Oh, my God. I'm so excited to be on. And look, I'm in a rooftop in New York City. This is
All right.
beautiful.
That's amazing.
Yeah, yeah. So this is a special one. I'm on a rooftop. It's amazing.
Cool.
So, okay, they're quick, but they're like different scenes. Okay.
Okay.
So there's a woman and she's dead in a room, and
She's dead?
she's dead. It's my husband's dream. She's an older woman and she's dead. And my little nephews are there. He knows they're there, but he can't actually see them. They're like 7 and 10 years old. They're boys. And they're like just walking around. There's a partition room and there's glass, so he could see through the rooms. All the rooms are like with glass. And the woman is dead. And so my husband goes closer to her, and there's an infant on her, a little girl. He doesn't know who the little girl is. And the little girl, she's a baby, and she's wiggling around on the old lady's corpse. And suddenly, the old woman comes alive.
Oh, wow.
And my husband turns around. There's a man there that he doesn't know, and the man is telling him. My husband's like, I can't believe she's alive. I can't believe, Queen's accent. Like, I can't believe this. Like, and the man is like, why can't you believe it? She's alive. Why can't you believe it? Because I can't believe it. So he starts fighting with this man. And my husband is getting so upset. He's like, I'm going to get my son, because there's going to be a fight with this man. Like there's like a physical fight, right? So that's the one part of the dream. The next part is he's trying to buy a house. He tried to buy a house. He couldn't buy the house. This is second time. Third time, he finally buys the house. The house cost $800,000, but he bought it for $780,000 the third time he tried to buy it. When he bought the house, he was so excited because it was lush green. And when he went in the house, there was a room that he did not expect that was open to the ocean. And he said, I'm going to sit here and smoke a cigar. This is beautiful. He doesn't smoke a cigar. He doesn't smoke cigars in life. So he said, I'm going to smoke a cigar. And then the final scene is he is renovating the house. He's getting a construction worker that we know who's older, but in the dream was younger, and he's renovating the house.
Wow. Fascinating.
Yeah.
This is pretty interesting. I like the so the nephews are 7 and 10.
Yeah.
Your husband's in a house. There's these glass partitions, like the rooms are like glass walls, right?
Yeah. Like you could see through everything.
You could see through everything.
Yeah.
Which represents the idea of transparency and exposure. And then there's this dead old woman, and the nephews are kind of staying away from her, but your husband kind of goes in there, and there's this young infant that's like on top of
her stomach area.
Yeah.
Her stomach area. Yeah.
Just like sitting on her stomach. And then all of a sudden the old lady comes alive, and your husband can't believe it. And there's this guy there saying, well, why can't you believe it? And he's like, well, dude, I just can't believe it. I mean, this is crazy. And then he's about to fight with this guy. And so he wants your son to be there. And then he buys the house. He couldn't get it the first time, couldn't get it the second time, gets it the third time. It's $800,000, but he buys it for $780,000.
Yeah.
And then there's this extra room that opens out to the ocean, and then he's renovating it.
Yeah.
Wow. This is a fascinating dream. What did you
thought it was interesting. Yeah.
What were your thoughts on it?
I'm like, God, he's getting these amazing dreams, and I can't remember my dreams in the last couple of weeks. And I was getting I'm like jealous. I'm like, well, this is like amazing. I have some thoughts, but I don't want to say anything.
Okay. All right. What about Joey or Marcella? Do you guys have anything?
Well, with the second scene, it's it it sounds it sounds positive because there's like a new beginning, which is like the eight. Eight means new beginning, and the lush green. That's like something like green means like alive, thriving, open to the ocean. That makes me think of the Holy Spirit, and that's a celebratory. That's why he is taking the cigar and like he's smoking a cigar. So I feel like the second part of the dream is something positive
Okay,
that's going to happen.
interesting. Joey, what are your thoughts?
So as soon as you said older woman, I heard Lady Liberty. And that many people think she's dead. The glass partitions, I see there being the transparency or some exposure that leads us all to realize that she's not dead. That there's going to be some sort of rebirth of her. And then the house scene, I see that is revamping the house, Congress. So we're on a national theme today.
Yeah, it seems like it. I kind of got that too. You know, just to add to that, I think it was really interesting, the idea of the dead old woman. And to me, in the theme of like the dogs, the idea of the dead old woman to me represents an old woman who was in authority and maybe has been removed. You know,
Somebody's coming to my mind. It starts with the letter P. No.
Paul? No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I think we're probably on the same track there, but it's the idea of, you know, their political career is dead. They're a corpse. But now something is going to be birthed in that same house, in that same room, but a level of transparency and something is going to happen. And the idea of her coming back, I mean, if you have an experience where you're dead, I don't know. I have friends that have come back from the dead, but I don't know personally. But I would assume that especially if you're an old person and you die, you're probably thinking that's it. You're not thinking you're going to come back. But if you come back, the idea of new life, particularly with an infant, something that is also brand new, I think represents kind of an undoing, and the death, I don't believe is necessarily literal to a particular person. It could be indicative of someone's political career. If they've supported death their entire political career and their policies resulted in the death of 70 million babies, and you know they celebrate death and they champion death and they support death, and you know they were part of the pandemic, which was death, and the globalist stuff, which is all death, murder, death, kill. Like it's just it's like that whole thing. But I like the idea of what you said, Joey, the idea of Lady Liberty, which I believe is, you know, representative of our country, and the house representing a glass house. First of all, you know, those who live in a glass house shouldn't throw stones. So the idea of there being accountability, particularly in Congress, and I think Congress representing itself as the House, but also the administration. The House can also represent the White House. So the People's House and the White House, represented both by the White House and the Capitol building. I believe that there's going to be a restructuring in there. There's going to be new life that's going to come, and it's going to be almost unbelievable. It reminds me of Psalm 127 when the Lord brought back, or 126, when the Lord brought back the captives from Zion. We were like men who dreamed. In other words, they absolutely couldn't believe it, that they're free and they're brought back to their homeland. And it's going to be that way when our land is restored and corruption is routed and these people are no longer in power. I also thought it was interesting of your husband. Your husband reminded me initially of the story of Ahab, because Ahab goes to make a real estate deal and the guy turns him down. So he tries to buy the house once, doesn't work, tries to buy it again, it doesn't work. But then the third time he does buy the house. And it wasn't through any finagling on Jezebel's part. It was like he kept trying and he got what he wanted. He got his land back. He got the key to the house. And then this was a house that opens to the ocean, at which point I heard from sea to shining sea. Right. And also the idea of Plymouth Rock, like we landed, we started this nation, you know, the modern part of this nation by landing obviously from the ocean. That's how most of our ancestors got here, except for the First Nations people, of course. And then there was the idea of renovation. It was lush, it was green, which is the idea of new birth, of freshness, of restoration. So there's all those themes in it. And again, to me, it reminds me of a lot of the other dreams that we've heard so far, which seem to have to deal with the nation.
John, I'm also hearing with the room that was unexpected, that when the house is renovated, there'll be a room that looks out upon the Lord that was unexpected, that will be added.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. Do you know where? That's a good question. Do you know where the house was? Was this like a New York house, a Jersey house, an Eastern Pennsylvania house?
I think it was a New York house because from the way he was telling me, like, you know, just knowing my husband, he wouldn't want to buy a house anywhere else. And so he didn't say that it was somewhere else. He would have told me. If he would have definitely told me, because we've talked about buying a house somewhere else. And so he would have told me if it was like a location outside of New York.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's fascinating. You know, I love the idea, of course, of obviously Lady Liberty is in the harbor.
Yeah.
You know, so I think it definitely has the theme of Lady Liberty. It also has the theme of national restoration, the cleansing of the houses, transparency, death of the old, rebirth into the new. There's just a lot there. And even the idea, even the number 7 and 10 can represent like judgment, like the 10 Commandments. And 7 is like perfection. It's like God's number.
Yeah.
So your nephews who were there to witness, you know, they weren't hanging out by the body, but they were there in the transparent house, seeing this woman that was not an old lady who was now dead. I mean, this just there's a lot of themes that we see that we're seeing over and over again, and just even in this call tonight. It's pretty interesting.
I just want to ask you, what do you think about the number 78? I know 7, like you said, is the perfection of God, and 8 is new beginnings, but 78, I tried to look it up and I really had a hard time.
Yeah, I don't know.
Why was it 780,000? You know what I mean? That he bought it.
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting. 78 in particular is, to me, that's what I see as the combination of God's perfection and new beginnings.
Okay.
And that 7 and 8 together times 10,000.
Yeah.
You know, and the idea of 10,000 is the largest increase, as far as I know, that's mentioned anywhere in Scripture. You know, Jesus talks about the parable of the sower, where there's 30, 60, and 100-fold return. But Psalms talks about there will be a 10,000 times or 10,000-fold increase on your flocks and herds. And so that's the idea of epic, ridiculous abundance. You know, 10,000 times increase means if you had 1 sheep, you now have 10,000.
Right. It's just the multitudes, right?
Yeah. If you had 1,000 sheep, you now have 10 million. Like, it's just massive increase. And so the idea of massive increase, and I believe that, and there's a lot of people that see that, you know, the people that have been, quote, in charge or whatever, the people that have been blessed with the responsibility of leading, have held us back.
Yeah.
You know, they've held back technology. They've held back, you know, innovation. They've put all kinds of red tape and bureaucracy. You know, we could live in a country of completely free energy and all kinds of food abundance.
Yeah.
And Instead, they're working on some satanic, demonic controlled agenda to try to buy into a several 100-year-old lie that the Earth can only sustain a population of 700 million to 1 billion people, which is just a classic lie of the devil.
Yeah.
And if you take your hands off kind of squashing innovation, there's so much abundance that we have. There's a book called Abundance, actually, and another book called Bold that talks about this. That it was like in the 1890s that somebody came out with a white paper. What they said, the Earth can only sustain 1 billion people. It's absolutely laughable and ridiculous if you ever get out and travel, particularly beyond some of the biggest cities. And I don't mean the United States, because the United States doesn't have the biggest cities in the world. It's places like, Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, or Mexico City, or Tokyo, or some of these places that are, 13, 15 million people that are massive. They're way bigger than LA and certainly on the level of New York City. But so I think it's just an opportunity for when God is talking about regime change, he's talking about power structure shifting, he's talking about a coming justice, and he's talking about a rebirth. And I love that, because a friend of mine had felt led to pray that when the newness comes in this country, God is he's about the land, he's about the people, and he's about the covenants.
Yeah.
But there may be a lot of our institutions that go away. And there's going to be a lot of things that need to be restructured because of things like abuse of power, because of rampant corruption in our organizations.
So true.
There's going to be a lot that's going to be dealt with, and it's going to look a lot different. I think it's interesting. But
That's awesome.
78. I just got the 7 and the 8. I didn't get anything beyond that.
John, can I tell you one more thing quickly?
Yeah.
My little niece, she's 5 years old. She's 5 years old. This is the one where her mama passed away 16 months ago.
Yeah.
She told me, and you just brought that dream to my mind. She told me she saw her mother in a dream, and her mother, she described her clearly. She told me, here's the catch. She told me her mother was holding baby Jesus in her arms.
Wow.
And she said that she let her hold baby Jesus, and her little brother was there too. And her mother let her hold baby Jesus in her arms. She described everything, every detail. That's a new birth. You're just like what you're saying. I'm like, oh my God, he's not only sending my husband dreams, but she's 5 years old. She remembered the color shirt of her mother, pink, blue skirt. She remembered holding baby Jesus in her arms, and that her brother was so excited to see baby Jesus. Her brother's 2 years old.
Wow.
So that's like a rebirth, right?
That's crazy. Yeah, there's so much there. Even the idea of what she was wearing, the blue and the pink, the clear delineation of gender, of revelation, and the masculine, and then the feminine, and the softer side. Like he's going to restore things like identity in this new season. He's going to restore lines that the enemy and the demonic and satanic people have tried to blur. They've tried to gaslight. They've tried to mix everything up, and there's an order coming, and there's going to be lines drawn again, and I think a lot of us are looking forward to that time. But it makes a lot of sense in the old lady coming back to life, especially if the baby that she's holding is Jesus. Like, that dovetails perfectly into this dream your husband had.
Yeah. I was like, when you were saying, I'm like, okay, it's got it. Because I was like, baby, okay, we hear baby Jesus, but it's the rebirth. I was like, wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, thank you so much. I don't want to take up any more of your time, but I was blessed to hear from you all, and see you next time.
Yeah. Thanks again for being on. We always love having you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Wow. Some interesting themes we're seeing tonight. All right. Let's go with Joanne. How are you? You're muted.
And how is that?
Hey, there you go. Great. How you doing?
Good. How are you, John?
Good.
Hi, ladies. Good to see you.
Hi, Joanne.
So thank
Hello.
you. Hi. So thank you for allowing me to share this dream with you. This dream I had 2 days ago, And I had another one this morning, and I believe it ties into that. And if you want at the end, I'd be happy to share it with you. It's very, very short. So
Okay.
this first dream has 3 parts, 3 different scenes. And so the first scene, it was like there was this young girl, a young woman who was with me. She was about in her 20s. She was small, petite, had dark hair. And she was hanging out with me all day. And she just realized that she had to get back to work, or she had to hurry up and get to work, or else she was worried she would get fired. And I was going to drive her to work, and I believe I looked down at the watch and I seen the time was 4:30. The second scene, we were walking around. We had to go to the bathroom. We were in an inside building. I don't know if it was with the same girl or not, but I was with somebody. We had to go to the bathroom. So we stepped into this small salon. And as I was turning around this corner, the salon was very, very small, and I realized it didn't have a bathroom. And as I turned to leave, I looked up at the ceiling, and there were a bunch of electrical wires hanging down from the ceiling. And I had this thought like they were under construction or something. So we just left because they didn't have a restroom there. And the last scene, I was at my real house, and one of my dogs got out. And usually when the Lord shows me this dog in dreams, it has to do with me or emotional healing or whatever. Just threw that out there for you. But so she had got out of the house and she ran across the street, and she was chasing a bunch of little, I want to say dogs. I didn't know if they were dogs or cats or a combination, but I'm just going to say I think they were dogs. Small breed, little bitty little dogs. And there were probably like 8 or 10 of them. There was a whole bunch of dogs, and she was chasing them across the street. And I blocked the doorway so my other dog wouldn't get out. And I guess she ended up coming back in, and I looked through the mini blinds and noticed a small, either black puppy or black kitten, probably a puppy. Between me and the puppy was a small puddle of water that apparently it had rained, so it left a little puddle of water. And that was the whole dream.
Interesting. Having dreams about dogs today. All right. So you were with a young girl. She was small, petite, dark haired. She had to get to work or she would be fired. It was 4:30. And then the second part, you went to a salon. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
And you went in, you were in the restroom.
Mm-hmm.
And then what happened next?
We went into the salon. We had to go to the bathroom. So we walked into the salon thinking they would have a restroom to use. But it turned out there wasn't a restroom. As I turned to leave, I looked up at the ceiling and noticed a bunch of electrical wires hanging down from the ceiling. And I had this feeling they were under construction or something.
Gotcha.
And the second dream I had this morning follows that theme of dogs and under construction or whatever. That's why I feel like they're kind of
right. Okay, so the dogs were
so
when
my
I write
dog
fast, I can't read my writing.
my dog got out of the house. She ran across the street chasing a bunch of little small breed dogs, and they were all just scattered around.
And then she came back in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, but then there was this puddle between you and the.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it was a black puppy, just like in that other lady's dream. Black puppy. That's interesting. Okay. Marcella or Joey, did you have anything? Joey does.
Not yet. Not yet. There's something there. It's forming. It's just not there yet.
I like what Jade said. The Exodus began. Now the duration of the Israelites' stay in Egypt was 430 years, and at the end of 430, to the very day, the Lord's divisions went out, the lords of Egypt. I also got Daniel 4, where it's talking about this is the dream of the tree, and then it goes into in verse 28. Nebuchadnezzar's humiliation. All this came upon King Nebuchadnezzar at the end of 12 months. It's talking about the passage of time. At the end of the 12 months or the year, he was walking about the royal palace of Babylon. The king spoke. The king, so this is verse 30. The king spoke, Babylon is not this, I'm sorry, the king spoke saying, is not this great Babylon that I have built for a royal dwelling by my mighty power and for the honor of my majesty. So we know that when he said that statement, his time was up. Like it was literally chapter 4, verse 30. That was the key, because in the very next verse, while the word was still in the king's mouth, which is instantly, a voice fell from heaven. King Nebuchadnezzar, to you it is spoken, the kingdom has departed from you, and they shall drive you from men. The idea of being chased out, right? And your dwelling shall be with the beasts of the field, and you shall eat your grass like oxen. And then it talks about the judgment, and then the 7 times that shall pass, meaning 7 years. So this is fascinating because it goes along really well with the idea of the Exodus, the coming out of the 430 years, and about the whole idea of regime change and new birth. Ephesians 4:30, do not grieve the Holy Spirit, whom you were sealed for the day of redemption. Okay, I just think it's super interesting, the wires or the idea of things not connecting, not hooked up, under construction. And in the midst of that, the dogs ran out. The idea of salon, you go into a salon to have your hair changed. And hair, a lot of times, it can represent the glory in Scripture, the glory of a woman. The hair is the crown of a woman's head. It can also represent wisdom. It can represent strength, but it also represents mindset. The whole idea of being transformed by the renewing of your mind. So when you step into a salon, it's that God is going to shift something. I think it starts with mindset, but I think it can also be a restoration of glory or strength or both, which I think that word is for you personally, Joanne. Mm-hmm. And going into the restroom in the salon is the secret place. It's usually the place with no windows. It represents like the room. A room with no windows also represents like your heart, going to the deep places with God. And as God continues to heal you, you're doing the work emotionally and on your spiritual side of where are you at with him. And so I think this represents the idea of there's coming a time where there's a coming out, like in the 430 years, there's a change of things that are going to happen, like in Daniel 4:30, and then there's a decision that's going to be made in the secret place, which is the place of self-reflection. It's interesting that there's a salon. You're in a salon in the restroom, because obviously salons are full of mirrors. You want to look at yourself. You want to watch the process. You want to look at how the hair and everything else is going to be done. But in the secret place itself, there's which is why I think it's interesting, because a lot of times people go to the restroom to do that. Just like a lady will go to the restroom to check her makeup and all of that, and then go back to dinner or whatever. If you're in a salon, like the whole point of being at the salon is that you're going to have a professional do your hair and kind of do you up and all of that. So if you're going to the restroom at a salon, it's not that you want to go check your hair or you want to check what's being done, because you can do that out in the salon. So it's the idea I believe, of letting things go, of dumping, of what do I need to be cleansed of, what do I need to wash from, what do I need to not partner with in this season, and then move into the next season that God has for me. So I think
What's
that's
interesting with what you just shared was this was a very small room. It was like probably the size of this dining room I'm in right now. It's very small to be a salon, and there were no windows. I just remember just turning a very
really,
small, and it was just all like walls. But it was so small, you know. And so I had taken the hanging wires as being like power,
yeah, for sure.
you know.
That's really good.
And their interpretation lines up with what the team had suggested in a couple other dreams I post on the Dream Lab. And with this is like an ongoing theme with dogs and with, you know, wilderness and different things. So I think that's, you're right on. Hmm.
Yeah. Wow. That's a good dream. I
It
like that.
sounds better coming from you than what I had in my mind. I just feel like because I'm kind of dreaming about the same type of, you know, dogs and, you know, I always feel like he's saying something to me that I might be missing or
Mhm.
something. Like it's always like constant inner healing or something like that. But the way you phrased it was, you know, because of where I came out of in the last season with the cancer and healing from that. And right now I'm doing great. I just finished retraining for my per minister job. And I'm,
Mm,
you know, I actually took calls today. And so who would have known? Because I was like on deathbed, you know, and my little hairs are growing back and everything. So when you said that, that's what I felt like. I'm walking into this new and staying connected. You know, what they train us is you have to stay connected to the Lord. You can't give what you don't have, you know, so we have to stay connected to Him.
yeah.
Like that
Yeah.
was right on.
Yeah, I love that. I think there's a lot there. And even the idea of there's a decision, there's something about Daniel 4, and I would just read that and see how it speaks to you. There's a decision that's made that ushers in a new era, you know, and there's a time that passes. There's a decision that is made where um, time passes. He's given the warning. He has the dream. It's interpreted. He's given the warning, and then 12 months pass. And then on 4:30, 4 verse 30, chapter 4 verse 30 is when he makes the decision to take the place of pride. And I don't think that that applies to you, but I think that there is a decision that you can make, and that's announced by the time being 4:30. And I believe that that's part of Daniel 4:30. He made the decision to operate in pride and say, "Look at everything that I've built," and be while the words are in his mouth, he's then chased out. Of course, the idea of the dogs kind of chasing out, you know, and then your dog kind of running after them, and then your dog coming back. So it represents, I believe that that's just a confirmation that it's talking about Daniel 4 verse 30. But again, I don't think it's a warning to you about pride. I think it's a shift of a season, but I do think, and God isn't showing me what it is, but I do think that there is a choice that He's laid before you that He wants you to make, and that's what the 4:30 represents. And it may be something as, I mean, for the king, nobody knew he said that. It was something literally in the secret place. He's out on the balcony and he just says to himself, pats himself on the back, "You've created all of this," and God's like, "Boom, this is what's going to happen." And so I don't see it as a judgment thing for you, but I feel like there's partnering with something that dramatically accelerates the process, because again, even after the time, after the 7 years passed, all of a sudden, bam, he's healed. You know, so I don't think you have to go through the 7 years, and I don't think it's a warning about pride for you, but I do think there is something there that God is calling you to make a decision on, and the decision time is now. And what happens with that decision, the effects of that decision are immediate. So it might have something to do with changing a mindset, being in the salon. It might have to do with partnering with your healing at some level. Again, God hasn't showed me specifically what it is, but I feel like you know, and you don't have to tell us. That's fine. You know, it's probably a personal thing that he wants to deal with you on. But what I would do is I would go read Daniel 4, and it's like just like God did with Nebuchadnezzar, is he told them all of this in advance. So he had the opportunity, but he chose the hard way. And not that this is a warning of judgment, but I feel like this is a warning of a massive and immediate shift in your life by you partnering, changing your mindset, partnering with something that he has laid out before you already. So I think it's a very important dream, and I think it's a good dream. And I think very rarely in dreams do we get the concept of immediate change, but that's the concept that God is laying out here in Daniel 4:30. So I think it's awesome.
Well, it sounds way better hearing from you than it does my own my own head.
Yeah.
Dream on Tuesday mornings. I am always like, okay, Lord, I guess you want me to see if John will help me with this one. I always think that. It's like, is it Tuesday? Yeah.
Well, I love
Did
it.
the
We're
ladies have
honored.
anything to add?
No,
Say that again.
I think you nailed it on the head there.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Well, thank you for coming on and trusting us with your dreams. We love it when you're here, and you're a big part of our family, Joanne. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you. That's very nice of you to say. And it's always a blessing to share my dreams with you. Thanks again. Y'all have a blessed night.
All right. You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. Wow. Let's go with Dominique.
Hello.
Hey, Dom. How are you?
Hi, good. How are you?
Good.
Oh man, let me tell you, it was hard to get on here. Last time my mom had it all set up and I was struggling to get on, but I had a really weird dream last night, and again, it involves a baby. So I was like, I have to ask about it, because I've been having a lot of baby dreams, a lot. So I wrote it down because they're always super detailed. So how are you guys?
We're
Good?
great. Glad you're here.
Good, thank you. So I had this dream last night. I woke up at like 7 a.m.
Okay.
I was in what looked like a hospital room, like a big room, almost like a lab, and in a white gown. I was in a white gown. I was telling the female doctor that I wasn't pregnant, but she kept saying that I was. I realized that maybe I was pregnant and delivering early, and she told me to pick a model on the wall. And they had it was like a screen, and I would press a button and it would change the screen. It would be like an image of 3 different things. So the first one was it was like a normal looking baby. The second, when I clicked through to the second one, it was like a robotic baby, like it had like a robotic eye or something. And then the third one was like a robot shaped like a pear, but it was supposed to be a baby. It was really strange. There was nothing human about it. I refused to select any of them and said, put these beds together. So I start putting like all these flat beds together. I'm having a natural baby is what I told her. I pulled a bunch of flat beds together and put sanitary papers all over the beds. The doctor was getting frustrated with me because I refused to lay down, and she didn't believe I was giving birth. I was on all fours and went into like a cat-cow pose, and the baby came right out. I could physically in real life, which was weird, like feel pressure there. Like I woke up like kind of feeling it from the dream. I couldn't believe it was so easy, but it was like the placenta or whatever comes after the baby wouldn't come out. The baby looked fine, like healthy, but the head wasn't fully developed. So you could see like the brain, but I think it was a boy, he was alive, and like It was really strange. I looked at a guy that I'd been seeing and knew it wasn't his baby and was confused on the timeline, but none of it made sense to me. It was March, which kept sticking out. I kept thinking I'm giving birth early in March. It's not making sense to me. I gave the baby to either my mom or my dad, and I walked around waiting for the placenta to come out and didn't need any help. Like, I was fine. Everything was so easy. Now it's like the scenery's like I'm home and I'm walking around. My parents are sitting at the dining table with the baby that now had a skull, but it was flat, super flat on top, like round but flat. And it had like all these fine hairs just like sticking out of it, like new grass coming in. I asked what they were feeding him, and my dad said, "Don't worry, it's good, I promise." I wanted to breastfeed, but I wasn't sure if I could and just didn't know yet. I walked around and I tell them, "Oh, the rest of it's coming out," and the blood and placenta fall on the ground. I cleaned it up. Then it's like I'm fast forwarding again. Now it's like I'm a whole new area. It's not in my dream. I don't really think any of it's like me. It's like I'm observing myself. I'm thinking like in reality what's going on as all the dream is happening. So the person in my dream is like this white female and the rest of the family is like white. And no one looked like anybody that I actually knew. It's nighttime and they're all smoking cigarettes and lounging outside. I asked for one, but the relative was messing with me and gives me a broken one. And I tell him to stop or else I won't let him use my lighter. He laughs and shows a full cigarette and gives it to me. I light it up. Not sure if I smoked it or not. It's like I'm observing, but also my thoughts are playing into reality. Then all of a sudden I'm under like this overpass, this bridge. And I see a guy talking to who would be a possible older version of my ex. He's plotting for a divorce and seems like he's speaking to a divorce lawyer. He asks him, "What are you going to claim?" He says, "I'll say she cheated. I'll take the kid too." And that version of me happened to be walking by and told him, "Well, you better be ready. You better have proof because I'm not letting you take this kid. And I have all the proof that I need. So make sure you're ready. You're not taking anybody." Then that version of me kept walking and met with possible family down like a lit path. Like it's dark out. The path is like dark. The people are there. And then it has like, I don't know, like the barnyard lights. I forget what they're called, like the string lights that are kind of like going down the path. And then that's the end of my dream.
Wow. Interesting. Fun, huh?
Baby dreams always.
Transhuman robot baby dreams like Skynet and Sarah Connors, and like this is all kinds of, it's like the Matrix and Terminator put together, you know.
So strange.
Yeah. Wow. Interesting. Well, I don't think it's literal.
Yeah.
But I do think there's a choice. I do think God may be showing you something about a relationship. I don't know what your situation is with this guy that ends up being an older version of your ex, but it sounds like God could be showing you down the road in that relationship potentially. I do think that, yeah, exactly. I was just thinking about this. The idea of iron mixing with clay is the idea of transhumanism. You know, the idea of cyborgs, or the idea of implants, you know, and that's, you know, with the advent of AI and robotics and things happening, there's a lot of push. There's companies even pushing people towards the idea of, and this is all part of a body transformation. It's all about this whole idea. And it's all based out of Genesis 3:15. Like most people they don't understand what the war is even about. Genesis 3:15 says that the offspring or the seed of the dragon will be at war with the seed of the woman or of Eve.
Mm.
So if the seed of the dragon is, there's the seed of women, which is obviously human DNA. And so if there's attempts to alter DNA or to transhumanize people or to do any number of alternative genders, body modification, brain implants, thinking, mind control, all of these things are an idea to pervert what God created. Because what the enemy wants to do is he wants to take us out of the place of being made in the image of God, which I thought it was interesting is there was the choice of the 3 screens, and you said there were 3 images. And I heard right then the idea of being made in the image of God. And the first one was the normal natural baby. The second one was transhuman, like some level of kind of cyborg kind of baby. And then the third one was just a total robot.
Yeah. Like nothing remotely human about it.
Yeah. So I think it's fascinating because I feel like what God is saying is these are the decisions that your generation is going to make. These are the things that you're going to decide if, when, we're already at the point where genetics, you could choose your baby's eye color, the sex of your baby. Now they even have birthing pods where they can grow babies in laboratories right now. I mean, that's not a sci-fi thing. That's not down the road. That's the world that we live in. And so I think it's really interesting. The whole idea of Frankenstein with a flat head, genetic manipulation in the womb, Stranger Things. They've done a level of predictive programming with us that we've all seen. We can name movies and say, well, it's kind of like that. And they did that on purpose to begin to desensitize us to the fact that technology is way far advanced over where most people who don't keep up on this really think it is. Yeah. Pods versus wombs, designer babies. Yeah, I'm just catching up on some of the comments. There's a lot of people that are even saying some of the same thing.
Yeah.
So I think it's interesting. It's the idea that your generation, this generation now, the generation that is, getting married and having babies and having families that are in that time of their life, where they have the opportunity to choose, well, how do you want to have a baby? Do you want there to be a level of, genetic modification? Do we want to look at what do we want to pick out? Do we want to look, at different things that, end up being, and I think it's only going to get worse, frankly. I think it's going to get worse down the road. But I also thought it was interesting how you kind of stood your ground and you said, look, now I'm going to have a natural baby. I'm going to do this the normal way. And you're putting the beds together and you're like, you get down on all fours, boom, there's the baby. Like, for you. And I feel like that was like the grace of God. But then I also thought it was really interesting that the afterbirth part was where there was a struggle.
Yeah. But it was like I was fine. I was expecting the birth to be harder, and the baby came right out, and I held the baby, and then I was like, okay, it's done, and I wanted to get out of there. It was like I did it myself. I don't need your help, and I'll be fine, and just kind of walked around, and then I was just kind of just letting, it was all natural. When I was asking my parents what they were feeding the baby, it looked like what they were feeding the baby wasn't natural, and they knew that it bothered me. And I was asking, where did you get it? What is it? And he's like, I promise you it's good. Yeah. And I'm like, okay. And I'm looking at, and I'm like, well, why can't I do this naturally? And I'm looking at the baby and I'm saying, okay, there's development on the head. It's got a covering now. And so I kind of just trust it and let it go. But yeah, it was just, I don't know, interesting.
Yeah, it is really interesting. I think a lot of times when God wants to wake us up to something that is so far out of the realm of possibility. You know, most people, when they think of getting married and having a family and being at that age, they're not thinking of the transhumanism decisions I'm going to have to make
Right.
and the genetic modifications or choices that I can have, you know, in vitro, the things that can really, you know, just where technology is, it's going to be a whole different, weirder experience. You know, instead of gender reveal parties, there could be gender choice parties where, and I don't mean after the baby is born. I'm not talking about what they're doing now. I'm talking about deciding in the womb, you
Yeah.
know, different things like that. And so I think what it is it's telegraphing the times and seasons that we're in. It's not of a future reality. It's where we are right now. Um, and where some of the stuff that, you know, even with the juice that they were giving people, you know, people have to make that choice. And that choice affects things like breastfeeding and things like birthing babies. And what does that look like for the next generation? And even the idea of the DNA. So I think it was interesting that your father was the one that was feeding the baby while you were dealing with the afterbirth. And then there was this fast forward part. And
Yeah.
the things that I see in the fast forward part were specifically the idea of a broken cigarette and you having the lighter, and then the idea of somebody's motives being brought to light and then you choosing the well lighted path. So there's a theme there of three things of and God's just telling you that you carry the light. You know, you carry the light. You're the one that has the lighter. You threaten, hey, if you give me a broken cigarette, you're not going to use my lighter.
Mm.
And then there's the idea of something being exposed, and you're under this overpass to see this. And then there's the idea of, I believe that God is giving you a confidence that the decision that you're going to make is going to be the right decision. Your decision is to go back and join family and to walk the well lit path,
Mm.
you know, in peace. But at the same time, you gave somebody who decided to be your enemy the warning that, you know, you're not taking my kid. This isn't going to go well for you.
Mm.
So
Yeah, that wasn't happening. It was like my voice came through at that point because in the dream it's not really me, but and I'm watching this version of me walk through at the same time that it's happening, and they weren't, I guess, like they were kind of taken by surprise. It wasn't meant for me to see, and then I kind of like made it known that I was there. Ooh, I'm sorry. Hold on. Sorry about that.
okay.
Made it known that I was there because I was like, I'm like, you can say whatever you want, but the second that it was like, he said that he was going to take the kid, that the whole goal of the divorce was not only to like, what's the word? To give me like a bad reputation, to spread a lie about me, but it was also to do it so that they could take away something that's valuable to me. I was like, I'm ready. Like, you're not, that's not happening. Yeah. And I'm letting you know it's not happening and I'm ready. So, for some reason, the whole March thing, it just kept sticking out. I don't know, like, why. It was like weird. It was like March in the dream, March in my own mind. That's something that birthing in March, like it didn't, for some reason, it was just like unsettling. Like it wasn't making sense to me that why March? And I'm like, what happens in March? Like I couldn't like wrap my head around it.
Do you ladies have any thoughts on this?
This
Like,
is
what's significant about March? I have no idea. Oh my God, Cora. Sorry.
there's a lot going on in that dream.
There is.
Do you hear anything from March, John?
Well, the thing that I'm thinking about when you're talking about birthing babies is the end of December is going to be the 9th month. So it's around the time of that we celebrate the birth of Jesus. If you get pregnant in March, versus delivering in March.
Mm.
So yeah, I think, and of course, March is really the only month that has a verb as the word. March 4th, March 1st. It's actually a command. Um, and so it can represent a mass amount of people driving in a particular direction. They've said that about, people that are even warning about the future of AI. It's basically, I've heard some people say that it's like we've already stepped off the precipice and we just don't have any idea, because we've developed AI to the point now that there's absolutely no way we can control it, and very little way that we can even slow it down. And so we don't know what we signed up for. We don't have a grid as to what that's going to do to future generations.
Right. Interesting.
So we're marching towards a common destiny as humanity. And, yet for the grace of God, there go we. Because we don't know. We don't know. In this massive kind of gluttony for power and technology and control, we've put some of these things in play that we don't know where they're going to end up.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting because, I mean, there's a lot of talk of AI. There's a lot of talk, possibly what has, people aren't probably not going to be able to have babies in the future because of certain things. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. Cora, come here. So it was interesting to me because it's just like I refuse, like I don't think people understand what the lack of humanity really means for us, and how far away from God it takes us. Like that's our relationship. When you start making things less human about yourself, you start getting further away from God. And I feel like there's something that's just no longer connecting with people sometimes. So that it's interesting that I was just like, I'm like, I don't care how this baby comes out. I don't care what options you have. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So because I'm more fearful of that, having a disconnect with God than I am with anything else. So yeah, that's it's interesting to think about that now. I don't know why I couldn't think of it. I was like, I woke up this morning, I'm like, I have no idea what to think about this dream. I'm just like, I know it's another giving birth. I'm in my dreams, I probably have like 12 babies. Like I've had so many dreams of having babies, twins, boys, girls, like,
wow.
Big babies, small babies. It's always, and it's funny because actually my parents, when I have like the dreams with the babies, they're always in my dreams as well. That are like family. So it's interesting how that always kinds of like comes together in the end. So
yeah, I like how you're so connected with your family, both in real life, but also in the dream. Even when you get this news of, what appears to be your older ex, you go right to your family, and even when after you've had the baby and you're still dealing with the aftermath, the afterbirth, your dad is there holding the baby. So I think it's the idea that, God has surrounded you with a community of people, and there are going to be some interesting choices that you're going to have to make, but you're going to make the right decision. It's going to be easy for you. New things are going to come from you, whether it's your creativity or whether it's from the generations that come from you themselves. But I would say, don't be afraid to birth what God has given you, but keep it natural. Don't let somebody, if you have a creative idea or a business idea or a ministry idea, don't let somebody come in and try to pervert it. Well, we need to make it more this way, or we need to make it that way. No, that's man getting involved with what God has made. And that's the whole idea of transhumanism, is man is trying to one up God, or they're trying to better God. They're trying to alter DNA. They're trying to add on a level of artificial whatever. And it's a perversion is what it is. And I don't think we can improve upon what God has done specifically. I'm not saying that artificial limbs or anything like that are wicked or anything like that. But when it gets to the point where it's altering the DNA and people are no longer people, we don't even have any idea. Like, we see the mental health issues we're dealing with now. What's it going to be like when people have brain implants that suddenly aren't working or whatever?
Right.
I mean, I don't think we've even seen how bad the abuses can be. God forbid. I hope it doesn't go there. But, every time there's a leap forward in technology, there's typically a price to be paid. Trial period. And we're in the trial period right now with some of these things that they've, this massive experiment that they did on all of humanity, or that they tried to do on the vast majority of humanity about 2 years ago. And there's a lot of people that are paying the price for their foolishness and their experimentation. And of course, the truth is coming out. We're seeing that over and over again. But
right. I'm excited.
Yeah.
Sometimes I wonder. Sorry. Yeah. Sometimes I wonder, I was a little worried last night for a few things, but sometimes I'm, going through the roller coaster of life, the ups and downs, the questions and all of that. And I'm like, why does it still feel so easy? Like, it's just, and I wonder sometimes my relationship with God, is it where it's supposed to be? So it's okay, because I feel like having that almost like reassurance of the natural is like also in part like the relationship. So yeah, I feel pretty good about it. So thank you guys. Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming on. We always love having you on, Dominique.
Thank you.
So give my best to your family, and we'll see you soon.
I will when they're back. They left me.
Yeah, I wondered. I thought I saw a picture of them overseas, and
yeah, like, wow. I didn't hear from them for 2 days, and I was like, "You're having too much fun, but you need to text me back. Let me know you're okay."
Yeah. So, wow. Yeah. All right. Cool. Well, we'll talk to you later, Dom. Take care.
All right. God bless, guys. Thank you.
All right. You too. Bye-bye. Awesome. Lisa, I think you were on last week, and I don't think we got to you, right?
Yeah, but I got on a little late, so no problem.
That's all right.
Hey, guys. How are y'all?
Good. How are you?
Good. How are you, Lisa?
Doing well. So this is kind of like a test for me, a trial. So
okay,
I'm going to see how it goes for future reference. So I have so many dreams. My goodness, I didn't know which one to choose, but try to go with a smaller one. So this one was a week ago, and it's one of many I had during that night. I'm walking home and I'm praying with my hands in prayer fashion. As I'm walking, an old blue car drives by, and I notice it slowed down. A man is holding a gun out the window, and I realize he is going to try to shoot me. I'm right in front of our long driveway, and I start walking up my driveway. The car turns around and pulls up my driveway past me, and the man is shooting at me with a rifle. He gets out of the car to get a better shot at me. I'm moving around, then I lie down on the ground, then I start jumping around trying to miss the bullets coming at me. Can you imagine what that looked like? So I call my son on my cell phone, who's at my house, to help me. And my son comes out of the house quickly and starts shooting at the man and saves me. End of dream.
Okay. Interesting. Do you feel like you're under attack with anything in your neighborhood?
Wow. Not that I'm aware of, but it's funny that you said that, because the driveway on the property that I own, the driveway used to be in a different location because my father and family members owned part of the land next door or next to my property, but then it got sold, and the person that bought the land put a fence up. So the driveway that used to come up to where I live is no longer part of the driveway. We had to create a new driveway. And so in the dream, the driveway was the old way before this person bought the property. But I'm not aware of anything.
Wow.
We get along, so.
So there's been a little bit of a battle over the driveway itself, it sounds like.
Well, not really. I mean, when he bought the property, it was his land, and he has cows, and he put the fence up after doing the survey. So, I mean, it was not a big deal at all. It's just, it used to be where we could come that way because when my daddy owned it, it wasn't a problem to come that way, and it's still not a problem because we have a new driveway now. So.
Yeah. Interesting. When you said cows, Joey looked up. Joey's like, cows?
Oh, got her attention, eh? Forgot about that, Joey. This might be a dream for you.
Joey's a cow expert.
Oh, I see it.
Cows.
Yeah.
What do you think, Joey?
I feel like it's a spiritual warfare dream. The old blue car, there's a revelation. And the person that saves you is your son, the son. But that's all I'm getting at the moment.
Okay. What do you think, Marcella?
I'm not sure. What sense do you get there, Lisa? Do you get a sense of what it means?
Well,
I just ask you.
Yeah. I looked up the verse for the fiery darts, Ephesians 6:16. Hold up the shield of faith to stop the fiery arrows of the devil. And I was praying with my hands up as I was walking down the road. So I felt the same, Joey, that it was spiritual attack.
Yeah.
I have a lot of dreams where I feel like I'm being attacked spiritually. But yeah, the blue car wasn't sure about. It was an older blue car. It was kind of a navy blue color. And then the other part was that I wasn't sure for sure about my son. I did think about Jesus, the son, but I also was thinking it was pretty cool that my son was the one that saved me, because I feel like I've been praying really hard for him a lot, and then he's the one that saves me. But again, it could be the son.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do think it was a spiritual warfare. I think it's interesting, the long driveway, and also the interpretive dance that you did from moving to lying down to jumping. I'm trying to picture this. Could you illustrate for that what that? But I think it's almost the idea of radical worship, of like moving. We start kind of hands in the air and swaying back and forth, and then like laying down is the idea of just complete surrender and stillness, and then the idea of jumping is like the idea of victory and battle and bouncing like people do in certain churches and things like that. And I just feel like that's what you were doing to avoid being shot. And then the sun came. And then of course in the dream, the sun was your son, but I hear the sun came.
Yeah.
And so the idea of obviously the protection of God and what Jesus did on the cross, being what provides you the level of protection and keeps you safe.
Mm-hmm.
And you call your son, so call on his name.
Yes, that's cool. I was curious too why I have a lot of dreams. I'm walking, and I'll be walking from town, and I live like 9 miles out of town, and I'll be walking home. So I just walk home a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
I like this older issue, one that hasn't reared
Mhm.
its head in a while. The idea of the old car.
yeah.
Um, also the ancient enemy. But I also really liked what Scott had to say. Dodging bullets is something that can be done in the spirit realm. And what I actually heard was um, when they're training Neo in the Matrix, he's saying, "You're telling me I can dodge bullets?" And he says,
Oh, yeah.
"I'm telling you that you won't have to."
Wow.
And that's what happens is basically, you know, at the end of the Matrix, the first one, he holds up his hand and
Mhm.
all of the bullets stop in midair. And then he takes one out and he looks at it and then he drops it to the ground and they all fall harmless. It's the idea of no weapon formed against me shall prosper. Like they don't even make it to him because he stops them in midair. And that's the
Yeah.
idea of a level of spiritual warfare,
Mhm.
especially in, I think, the coming days that we're going to be into and we're going to be a part of because of the things that God is going to be doing in the earth and because of really the severe times that we live in. And so I think it's interesting the idea that it literally came to your property line.
Mhm.
It didn't come up to your house, you know,
Right.
but it was the driveway. It was out by the road.
Mhm.
And so I think that that's really, really interesting.
Yeah, the shield of faith, holding up the shield of faith. God's been showing me numerous times here lately, 111 or 11:1, especially Hebrews 11:1, and just anyway, you know, about the faith. Now the faith is of things. I can't even say it now, but
Faith
I
is the
know it.
substance of things hoped for, the evidence of
Hope
things
for,
not.
yes, and evidence of things not seen.
Yeah.
And so it almost feels like it's just God still reminded me, keep the faith, keep the shield of faith. And because it's been a trying time here lately, and maybe that's what he's showing me, and that I am being shot at with those fiery darts, but the son has me.
Yeah.
Will save me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it's a good dream. It's a dream of safety. It's a dream of protection. It's a dream of the enemy not prospering. And it's a dream of both prayer and radical worship.
Yeah.
So,
Thank
yeah,
you guys. Thank you.
good stuff. Thanks for coming on, Lisa. It's
All
good to see you.
right. Good to see y'all. See you shortly.
All right. Take care. Well, guys, we got a hard stop at, now. So those that we didn't get to, I'm sorry. Please come back next week. We'll try to get to you next week. We have a class that we teach literally in 3 minutes. So thank you for being on with us tonight. If you're around our community, if you like live dreams, if you want to be a co-host at some point, if you want to get deeper and you've heard some of the things that we've talked about, like the Joseph method, or like doing a dossier, or like an intelligence grade analysis, things like that, check out spiritualintel.com. I'll put that banner up as we're signing off here, but that's the spiritual intelligence mentorship is starting within a week or two. So there's still a few more seats left. If you want to get involved, I would very much encourage you. It'll absolutely change your life. And that's no understatement. We have numerous testimonies by all kinds of people who have said that it's just completely rebooted the way that they think about dreams and how God communicates with us. So especially if you dig live dreams and dream talks and some of the things that we do, and you're part of our extended community, it might be the opportunity to kind of jump on in and be with us on a little bit deeper level. So pray about it and let us know. But thank you, and we're here every Tuesday. We will see you next week. Ciao.